Call this meeting to order this evening. I'd like to welcome you all here. Nice to see you crowd. On that one. Here at Center Grove, we have a mission statement, and it reads as follows. We develop knowledgeable, confident, and responsible citizens through inspirational and innovative learning opportunities. And tonight, before we do the pledge, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Arkoff, who is a veteran, who'd like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. I would ask if you wouldn't mind, if everyone would take a moment, if we could stand and just take a moment of silence for the tragedy in Afghanistan today. We lost 11 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman. So if we could take a moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. We'll now say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As you notice, we're looking around the room, and you'll see what the TVs are, so hopefully, wherever you're sitting, you can see as we put things up, so the big screen might not be where you can see it. So our next order of business is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. President, I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is public comments regarding agenda items.
Mr. President, as a procedural order tonight, I move that we extend the time allotted for public comments from 15 minutes to 30 minutes for this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have any?
I'll second that.
Mr. Hubbard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Our next is the action items, public comments. Dr. Arkoff,
Thank you, Mr. Russell. We'll say
we're going to do it a little different tonight.
Yeah, a few things before we start. We'd just like to remind everyone this evening, and we thank everyone for being here, and really appreciate the calm and quiet demeanor that we have. That's why I love Center Grove. We're responsible citizens, just like how we have our mission statement. So thank you all very much for being here. This evening, we're asking that we have the quorum. It's going to be an opportunity for folks to stand up and speak. We are live streaming it, so it is hard to hear. So if there is clapping or cheering or noise from the crowd, it will be hard for people online to hear it. So we're asking that folks please refrain from doing that. Those that get up and speak tonight, there are a few guidelines. You can see them on the screen here. The whole idea of this public input is to provide input about the plan and about the presentation. So we ask that it's not personal, that's not directed at anyone that is employed by the district or any other board members. If there are comments, they all should be directed to the board president for the policy. So we just ask for that decorum during the public speaking portion of our evening. Without reading too much to you, as I assume everyone can see this and understand, if for some reason we lose control of the meeting, we'll recess and we'll end the meeting. So appreciate everyone understanding that and knowing, taking responsibility for yourselves as we go through this evening's public comments. This evening we have tried to organize it what we believe was in support or in opposition of the proposed plan. Some of you may have been able to watch the coffee chat yesterday morning where we presented the plan. So hopefully you felt that you were able to understand it and could address it tonight with some of your concerns. We have received over a couple of hundred emails, some folks 3 or 4 times, so thanks for those emails. I'm not done responding, so I apologize. I do have another job too besides answering emails. But we're going through them. We have read 99% of them. They may have read all of them. I'm not through them all yet. So
Up until the beginning of the meeting, I was caught up.
and I appreciate that. And we're continuing to read them. We have had some parent meetings as well. We've met with parents who've taken time out of their day to meet with myself, Mr. Russell, and members of my team. So we also appreciate that, folks taking their time to do that this last couple of weeks. As I said, on the document tonight where you signed up, we had asked for you to put in your first and last name, your street address, and then to check the box. A lot of times people ask me, why is that? Well, first and foremost, it's important to the board to hear from people who live in the community, people that have kids in the district first. You may or may not be aware, but there are people who travel around that have nothing else to do but to sign up for school board meetings that have nothing to do with the district, and they get paid to do it. And this is one way that we look to try and prevent that from happening. Fortunately, we've got a good community that we know most everybody, so it's pretty rare that we might have a stranger get up and speak. So that's one reason why we do it. Secondly, we just want to ensure that we hear from folks that have kids in the school. So, tonight, we have gone through the list, and what we've done is just went by first come, first served, and we are going back and forth between the green and the red. Now, hopefully that represents, and you understood that represented what you wanted to address today. If for some reason we don't get to you this evening, please, please, please feel free to email us if you haven't already. If you have, you don't have to. But if you have not, please feel free to email us so that we can get your comments. I also like to remind folks every chance I get, a school board meeting is not a public meeting. A school board meeting is a meeting held in public. The major purpose of the meeting and the public being held in public is for you to observe the business of the school board. The board allows for public comment. It's an option school boards have. They don't always have to do it. Our school board has done that for many, many years. And so while they would love to sit here all night long and hear from hundreds of people, I'm sure, we want to be respectful, have a certain amount of time this evening, get folks in, because I'm sure after a while we would have repeat comments or similar comments. So that's why they've extended it to 30 minutes, and we will try to get through. Each person will have 3 minutes for a total of 30 minutes, so we may get to more people tonight if you don't go too long and we have extra time. So I think that's the majority of everything I have to say. Yes, and you'll come up there, and Mr. Alexander's going to be the timekeeper, and he will give you a heads up when you are...
I will start the time when you begin your comments, and I will give you a 1-minute warning, and then I will tell you when your time is up.
And I will say your name and your address and the box you checked, and you do not have to say that. So your time will just start with, to start talking. You don't have to get up and say your name or any of that, since I'll do that. So, this way it doesn't eat into your time. So are we ready?
I never start
So, yes, let's have our first speaker, please.
Okay, our first speaker tonight is Aaron Weber at 1028 Silver Creek Court, Greenwood, community member.
I'm actually going to be hearing.
Yeah, is that live mic on? It might have shut itself off. Hang on just a minute.
I'll be you. Can you hear me now?
Hang on.
I'll be yielding my time to Dr. Carly Carvel.
Dr.
Charlie Carvel, 1499 West Hampton Drive.
Doctor, could you move closer to the microphone for us?
I can move closer to the microphone.
That's
Can you hear me? Okay. To the board and the Center Grove community, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Dr. Carly Carvel, MD, and I am a parent to a Center Grove student and a board-certified family medicine physician practicing in the area, and I have also taught undergraduate microbiology both in person and more recently online at a local university. I stand before you today to represent many medical professionals and many concerned parents in the area. I do not wish to go with division on this issue, nor do I have any political motivation. I do, however, have a public health motivation in what I will say. I ask the community as a whole to stay respectful of each other and remember we are humans first. I do understand this is difficult for the board, so I ask that you follow established guidelines in regards to masking as set forth by the CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and American Academy of Family Practice. The large number of experts involved in these guidelines reviewed vast amounts of data and made the recommendation that children should mask irrespective of the number of cases. 2% case benchmark is too high for a number of infections to start using methods that have been recommended by medical experts. As masks can help to mitigate the spreading COVID, to not follow experts in this area truly makes a mockery of medicine and science that is genuinely astonishing. We all want the schools to remain open and overall allow children to be safe and have in-person learning. However, if the COVID cases continue to rise as we are seeing, then that will not happen. Given what I have seen in the dashboard for Center Grove, absences are becoming overwhelming. In this state, the pediatric hospitals are filling with COVID-related admissions, and in all honesty, no child should need to die for the school district to try to mitigate the spread. The principal ways this can be done per science are social distancing and mask wearing. My child wears a mask to protect others. All children and teachers should wear masks to protect each other. I do understand that this is controversial and that this is truly the part that is hard for medical professionals to understand. As I ask that we look after each other and listen to science and medical professionals, please follow the recommendations given by the medical experts. I do not have any hidden agenda, nor do I seek to take anybody's autonomy away. But I can say that COVID is significant in our community, and I ask that changes be made in line with science to protect our school district, and if we do not, that would be a big mistake if children do get significantly sick. This is something that we would not be able to come back from. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate you listening to what I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Linda. This is Linda Meyer. Thank you, Linda. And Linda is 1247. Is that Stu?
Stone Ridge.
What is that? Oh, Stone Ridge Court. Thank you.
Those against the mask mandate,
Linda,
want-
can you-
I've never been accused of not being able to be heard. Those against the mask mandate want to work together for a resolution that all Center Grove parents, students, and personnel can live with. No one side should have the absolute say-so in the decision, and there should be flexibility from all points of view. Before you reach your final vote tonight, we're asking you to seriously consider our position against mask mandate. When the pandemic began nearly 2 years ago, our lack of knowledge arguably justified extreme measures of safety, mask mandates, and social distancing. Hopefully, we've learned how to manage our fear and uncertainty through the availability of a vaccine to teachers, parents, and children who choose to get vaccinated, and the use of masks to those who choose to use them. And in all of this, the operative word is choice. Members of one group here tonight want to exercise their constitutional parental right to choose what they believe as parents is in the best interest of their children. They adhere to the fundamental belief that Americans have the right to be sovereign over their own bodies, and we will refer to them as Group 1. Members of another group you will hear from tonight, they have chosen to wear a mask and to mask their children, and we will call them Group 2. The issue before us is whether or not Group 2 has the right to infringe upon Group 1's constitutional and parental rights to try to pressure this board to mandate masks for all children in the Center Grove schools. Please note that Group 1 is not trying to force its beliefs on Group 2. Group 1 respects the constitutional and parental rights of Group 2 to choose, and we believe those parents are in the best position to determine what is right for their family. And it is apparent, though, that Group 2 has no problem trying to force its opinions and choices on Group 1, which is contrary to our beliefs and our rights. Group 2 relies on medical advice. We've heard for the last year and a half how different medical advisors differ on their opinions and whether masks are even effective. They are little incubators for bacteria. And so, are they really effective to keep our children safe? Nelson Mandela famously said there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. We don't have any long-term scientific data to determine the impact of the psychosocial impact of these results. We don't even have...
Time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is David, is it Bozeman? Bowser. Bowser, thank you. 3686 Amberry Lane, parent, Cartersville. You may begin, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate this opportunity tonight to address the school board. And I know this is a challenging situation for all of you, and I'm sure a situation none of you ever expected to be in. While there does seem to be a lot of division here tonight, there is also a lot that unites us here. We want in-person education for our children. We want a safe learning environment for our children. I believe all of us here truly deeply care for our children. The difference lies, however, in how we get there. In any other area of life where we don't have the expertise, we seek the advice and recommendations from experts in that field. If we need financial advice, we seek counsel from a financial planner. If we need legal advice, we seek the counsel of a lawyer. The Indiana State Department of Health strongly recommends masks in K-12. And in making that recommendation, they joined the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Johnson County Health Department, and many other reputable medical experts who have all made clear in unanimous recommendations about wearing masks in K-12 schools. While I support the revised plans that the board has put forth, it is a step in the right direction. I believe it is still more reactive than proactive. So why do we wait until we have a situation at hand? The data is clear that the virus is spreading among our children. The Delta variant in particular is starting to take a more stronger toll on our children, as evidenced by the hospitalizations and especially those at Riley than the previous variants. However, we are not in the same place that we were in March of 2020 when the pandemic first started. We know more about the virus, and we continue to learn more about it. How it affects people of all ages, how it spreads, and most importantly, how to stop it from spreading. Until vaccines are available for our younger children, masks and social distancing, along with other sanitary procedures, are how we stop it. I appreciate the board responding to the data and making a proposed plan that will provide a framework for in-person education to occur in a safe manner. My hope is more will be done to better protect our children by following the medical recommendations. And as an attorney, I would say in response to earlier this discussion that there is no constitutional right schools have had a long history of being able to provide with safety measures in place as well as vaccine requirements for the safety of children at hand. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Karen Cecil, 5092 Greendale Drive, parent, Cartersville.
Thank you. I'm Karen Cecil. I have 3 kids in the Centerbrook school system. I'm also a graduate. I'm also a doctor of a different kind, a DRPH, which is a doctorate of public health, and a master's in public health. But I'm here today to share some stories and experiences from families and parents who have children in this district but can't be here to share them on their own. Many of those who favor mask mandates, even those so-called experts, claim that masks don't bother our kids. The reality is that for many families in our district, this simply is not true. Masks present problems for children with sensory issues, asthma, anxiety, auditory disorders, dermatitis, and other skin disorders, just to name a few. Let's take, for example, Aubrey, a first grader in Centerbrook District. She is a high-risk child because of a health condition causing scarring in her lungs. She gets pneumonia and requires hospitalization 2 to 3 times a year. If there is a family in this district who wants to prevent their daughter from getting COVID, this is that family. But the truth is, Aubrey's already had COVID. Thankfully, she recovered from it just fine. What has caused Aubrey's family far more trauma than COVID did was the requirement for her to wear a mask. You see, Aubrey is autistic. She, like many children in our district, has sensory issues. She chews on everything. She physically cannot help that. Although her IEP specifically stated she could wear a face shield rather than a mask, the school refused to permit this. Knowing she would have to be masked when she got into the building, Aubrey became so hysterical that most mornings she had to be carried into the school by her mother. Landon, a 3rd grader, began having headaches and stomach pain last year after hours of wearing the mask at school. Adding to his anxiety in Landon's class, if the mask fell below their nose or they pulled it down momentarily, they would lose recess time, one of the very few mask breaks they had during their entire school day. Last, I want to tell you about Finley. Finley is a kindergarten student born with a cleft palate, and she has difficulty with her speech, and it became hard to understand her when she is not wearing a mask. Add to mask, and it's nearly impossible for her to communicate effectively with her classmates. She got into the car at pickup most days crying because of her frustration at no one being able to understand her. One classmate made fun saying she needed to learn to speak English. Her dad said it took her most of the summer to return to her normal, happy self. A mask requirement will be a huge setback and obstacle for Finley. Frankly, she has had enough setbacks and obstacles to overcome without this. Those are just a handful of stories from our district. There are many, many more. Statistically, a child recovers from COVID within about 10 days, usually less than that. But the stories we have shared with you tonight and stories just like them from all over our community tell us that masks do have consequences. Consequences that last much longer than 10 days. Wearing a mask for 7+ hours a day is not a benign issue. It's not a no-brainer, as many would have you believe. There is a high cost to mask mandates for many of our children. We don't actually know how effective masks are at preventing the spread of COVID. We don't know if they help a little, a lot, or even if they help at all. The experts on this do not agree. But let me tell you what we do know.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Teresa Lockhart, 4650 Hickory Ridge Road, a parent, Greenwood.
I wanted to start by saying thank you, Dr. Arkanoff, your team, and the school board. You made a decision to invest in the education of children, which is a critical role in any community. I know none of you chose a path having to make medical decisions during a pandemic. That being said, the state and county have passed mandatory authority to you as you see fit. Using the stance of only mandating that which state and county mandates is not a viable strategy any longer. In less than 3 weeks, it is clear weaker language like recommended or strongly recommended are not strong enough. It allows opinions to be debated against the public-minded advice of health experts. I think all of us in this room can agree that we have a common goal: provide the best education for our students in a safe environment and keep them in-person learning. The difference lies in our opinions on how best to achieve that goal. I, for one, am not a medical professional. I'm an engineer who looks at good problem in gathering data to provide a comprehensive solution. I enjoy the Swiss cheese model used in the coffee chat because that's often used in aerospace product safety training as well. You may add many layers of risk reduction reduction or slices of Swiss cheese to reduce the opportunity of your defined problem, whether that be an engine shutdown on a plane or the spread of a highly contagious virus in school. All the layers have different strengths and weaknesses, and while none are perfect, the important part is that each layer improves the effectiveness of every other layer. Prominent medical organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC have laid out prevention methods that, when combined, give the best reduction for risks in schools: vaccination, masking, physical distancing. I will not name them all. I'm happy to see that Center Grove has implemented many of these recommendations, but they work best when they're all used. I'm left questioning why is one of the least expensive and most readily available options not the one mandated. Masking is only effective if everyone participates. It's not a choose-your-own-adventure option for the Swiss cheese method to work. Masking is proven to drop infection rates by over 70% in multiple collegiate studies. I question how we even got to a space where masking was optional for the unvaccinated population in the first place. Infections at Center Grove School are 33 times higher compared to last year than this time, and yet we're implementing less measures to keep kids in school. While I'm glad the district has made the back-to-school policy more robust, it still uses a policy of reacting to an event once out of control rather than proactively reducing the risk. We should all want to use the available risk mitigation items presented to us by the medical community to keep kids in school in person. By not using all the options that are readily available, I do not believe the board is upholding our common goal of providing the best education for our students by keeping them in school. I ask that you be brave and make an educated decision as the leaders of an educational board, instead of making a decision based on misinformation and pleas of people who aren't medical health professionals. I urge you to follow the guidelines of medical professionals, just as school mandates all sorts of other things to provide safe learning environments that reduce risk to students. Hold up your end of the deal and do what's right, not just what's easy.
Our next speaker this evening is Mary Graham, 5712 Timbrook Way, parent, Barbersville.
So before I speak, I would just ask, before we start the time too, I would just ask that we not video. I know this is live stream, which I'm fine, but I have a minor here, so I ask that we don't video and have it reposted on Facebook or Instagram or any of that, please. Okay, please, sir. I am a respiratory therapist. I've been a respiratory therapist for 26 years, and as a healthcare provider, we have mandatory mask fit tests yearly. Every year, we have to be properly fit tested with our masks because there's so many different types. They come in different fabrics, they come in different sizes, and with our COVID patients, we mask, we gown, we glove, we put on goggles, we put on headgear, okay? And with our COVID patients, we place our COVID patients in negative airflow rooms to prevent the spread of an airborne disease. Why? Because we all know that mask wearing alone does not stop the spread of COVID. This is my daughter. She attends Center Grove High School. I don't have her here to exploit her, but I want to put a face to her story. She's always been an honor student. She's always made A's. She's never had any mental health issues. But last year, Rachel was quarantined 3 to 5 times. We lost track due to contact tracing. She did all the right things. Rachel wore a mask. She washed her hands. She did everything she was supposed to, but yet she was quarantined again and again, and she never had a sniffle. All of this unnecessary quarantining caused her to have anxiety, caused her to have fear, not because of this disease, but it's because she was forced to stay at home and learn all by herself, which was a lot of pressure to put on any young person. Fear of failure, falling behind her peers. Even though she's academic, she's a hard worker. She has supportive parents that are home to help her. And despite all this, her mental health began to suffer, and for the first time in her life, she was failing school. And at the end of last year, all of this manifested into tics, physical and verbal tics. Rachel began this school year, and it's been somewhat normal for her. She's not been quarantined. She almost doesn't have to wear a mask. And guess what? It's for the first time. Her grades are up. Her anxiety is down. And her grades are up. Her anxiety is down. She's a different child. But listen, if masking is what it takes to put an extra measure of protection, most of us will agree here that we will do what it takes to keep our child in school. But this is what I ask of you. on your end to add an extra level of protection to keep our kids healthy. Would you please allow antibodies? Whiteman School, they allow their students to return from quarantine with antibodies. My hospital allows antibodies. Being in the same county, why can't we allow antibodies too? This insane quarantining of healthy children for their it's got to stop for their emotional health and well-being and for their overall education. Rachel is not alone. She was just one of the few brave young students that were willing to stand up here and tell her story.
Line 364, Hazy Lane, parent, Greenwood.
Good evening. So I am a parent and a member of this community, and all of us in this room are here to do what we feel is best for the students of Center Grove. This is the first pandemic for all of us, and information changes as we learn more about COVID-19. Regarding the use of masks, quarantine, and other changes related to the pandemic and to the health and welfare of everyone, I ask the board to follow the science. Listen to the medical experts that are connected with the school system. If they don't have the answers, then listen to the county and state medical communities. Listen to the medical experts you trust and be willing to modify plans based on the science. If the science and experts say masks are a benefit, which they do, then masks should be required among the changes. I realize there is more to this plan than masks. Again, if the science is followed, I do not see this plan as a draconian action. I see the plan as one that benefits our community. For the health and welfare of all students and employees, please make educated, well-informed decisions. Do not make decisions based on pseudoscience or community fear. Rely on the experts. No one in this room wants to hear about another preventable death from COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Montgomery, 3905 Chelsea, or I'm sorry, what does that say? Chelsea Terrace. Thank you, Chelsea Terrace. Parent, Greenwood.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening. I'm asking that you keep mask wearing a choice. As an industrial hygienist and certified safety professional, I could be the most qualified person in this room to comment on masks. For those that do not know, industrial hygiene is a science and art devoted to the anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and control of those environmental factors or stressors arising in or from the workplace, which may cause sickness, impaired health and well-being, or significant discomfort among workers or among the citizens of a community. Presently, most of the people talking about exposure and exposure control are medical doctors. Certainly, these are intelligent individuals. They are not IHs whose goal is to control and the exposure and select appropriate PPE to wear and when. Doctors treat people, IHs protect people. No one is talking to the subject matter experts. One of the core concepts of IH is hierarchy of controls. This shows what to do is trying to control a hazard should do. Elimination or substitution is not applicable to viruses, so we move down to engineering controls. Options here could include dilution through ventilation and destruction technology for ventilation systems. Administrative controls are things such as written policies and training with the goal of reducing duration, frequency, and severity of exposure. PPE could be many things, but for this conversation, inhalation is our concern. Therefore, respirators are the selected PPE. PPE is also the last line of defense and least desirable option. Masks are not respirators and are not PPE, so they don't fit within the hierarchy of controls. Masks are not respirators because you cannot seal the edges of a medical mask and cannot conduct a fit test on a mask. While OSHA recommends a mask, they acknowledge that masks are not respirators and cloth-based coverings are not an acceptable substitute for respirators, thereby confusing the public. The CDC has issued similar recommendations, yet acknowledges that masks are not a reliable level of protection from inhaling smaller airborne particles. The virus particle is so small that it will easily find its way in or around the mask. If you were to take a hair from your head, could you slip that between your face and the mask? This is what we put people who are doing asbestos work in. An asbestos fiber is 5 microns, and you expect this to block a particle that is 0.14 microns? Study after study that done healthcare workers comparing no mask to mask and mask to N95 filtered face pieces show there's no benefit to healthcare workers wearing a mask for an N95 to prevent respiratory influenza like illnesses. To suggest a community at large would have no training on donning, storage, cleaning, or replacing would benefit from such has no scientific backing. Talk to the experts, use engineering controls to dilution and destruction, and keep your promised appearance that we have choice.
Katie, this side. Please do not yell out.
Good evening, members of the board and community. I'd like to start by putting on record that I represent a large group of parents who chose not to be here tonight. This meeting itself poses risks they weren't willing to take. I requested this meeting be held virtually, or that there be a virtual option at the least, and I'm disheartened that the board is giving both sides of this debate equal opportunities to be represented. The only real revision I noticed during the copycat presentation was the change to require masks if the infection rate in any school reached 2%. While this is a step in the right direction, it's not sufficient to keep kids healthy and in school learning in person. Research shows that face coverings are far more effective if they are used preventatively and proactively as opposed to reactively. Why do we need to allow so many children to become ill and possibly end up hospitalized or lose their lives to enforce a very simple protocol that kept kids in elementary schools learning all in person all year last year and does them no harm? I'm having trouble understanding why the board doesn't seem more concerned with the health and safety of children who don't even have the option to protect themselves or another in any other way right now. Masks are the solution, and last school year proved that. Now here we are in a new school year with a much more virulent, transmissible strain of the same virus that's hospitalizing Indiana children at rates exponentially higher than last year, and we're not requiring masks. With all due respect, there is no logic in this. Many surrounding suburban school districts have instituted this mandate regardless of socioeconomic status or political affiliation. This is not a political issue, it is a public health issue. I've had the pleasure of communicating with several local medical professionals about this issue, and I personally work in behavioral health in an integrated care setting, and I can assure you the majority of us, the unified front, are in support of masks. We want to keep our kids in school. We have jobs we'd like to continue working in without disruption. We'd like to see our kids' academic instruction be carried out by the professionals who are educated and trained to do so skillfully. We are not teachers, and many of us humbly acknowledge that we're not skilled or patient enough to teach our kids at home. As you've left us no virtual option this year, we're left with no choice but to weigh the importance of our children's physical versus mental health and well-being, as we know they need peer interaction and specialized instruction, but sending them to school means potentially jeopardizing their health. Not only now, but in the future, since we don't know what long-haul symptoms will look like for children. Having worked through this pandemic as a therapist treating all ages, I can attest I've never once dealt with a child, adolescent, or teen who struggled with mask wearing, although I'm very sorry for the young lady who's mentioned tonight. They are all adapted. They all adapted in my experience. I also had a kindergarten son whom I had to remind frequently to remove his mask when he was home from school because he got so used to it. I can also attest that I treated kids who had COVID-19, or had friends or teachers or parents or bus drivers or other relatives suffer or die from COVID. And this is what we processed. This is the trauma of COVID, not masks. My kindergartner is now in first grade, struggling to keep his mask on because so few of his friends and peers wear one. I hear that stories of kids being bullied and ridiculed. And the irony is that mask is protecting those kids doing the bullying. This is unacceptable, as is the fact that social distancing measures aren't being adhered to properly. If you're unwilling to reconsider your plan and mandate masks as many surrounding school districts with similar infection rates are doing, I'd like to offer a different solution. Please consider a plan to support voluntary segregation of students.
Our next speaker is Corey Carpenter, 5763 Saddle Club Road, Bargersville. Corey, are you, Aaron, thank you.
School board. You're making decisions that affect thousands of children. We understand that a certain amount of this is out of your hands, and in a normal world, the public schools take their cues from the higher powers and go on down the road. But this is not a normal world. This is a world flipped upside down, especially for our kids. things that we as parents have been told from your administration just this week, and hope that it encourages you to ask yourselves if you really consider what you're asking us to accept. We were told in the coffee chat that at most, 3% of close contacts are actually getting sick. In other words, you know at least 97% of the students you're telling to stay home are completely healthy. Respectfully, do you hear yourselves? And have you questioned the authority that is mandating this? We're told that vaccinated students are exempt from quarantine, and we're told in the same breath that you know that vaccinated children are still contracting and spreading the virus, but they're exempt from quarantine because they're vaccinated. Do you hear yourselves? We're told that a positive COVID test in the last 6 months is accepted because having COVID produces antibodies that make you immune. But antibody tests that show you have antibodies are not accepted. Do you hear yourselves? A coffee chat is supposed with the idea that we will get to have some of these hard questions answered, but they're met with no response week after week. Questions like, if you're seeing positive cases with vaccinated individuals, knowing they can still spread COVID, why do they not have to quarantine? It was asked several times and was met with silence. Doesn't exactly inspire confidence in our decision makers. We get it. You take your recommendations from the state and from the professionals you've hired, but this is unprecedented time. Why aren't you taking unprecedented measures to seek truth and facts? Why aren't you asking the hard questions, and why aren't you answering our hard questions? Respectfully, you're making decisions as though last year never happened. We've already lived through 18 months of this. We know that we're keeping healthy children at home. We know that it is having horrendous effects on their mental health. And you're still making the same decisions that you made last year when all this was unknown. Why? Because the health department told you to? How many hard questions have you asked the health department and Center Grove administration? Where's the leadership that says this isn't adding up and this isn't good for our kids? And we have to do something. That is the leadership that we need. That is the leadership we thought we elected. Protect our kids. You can't protect them from COVID. It's here and it's not leaving anytime soon. But you can protect them from the complete nonsense that is having far more adverse effects on them than a virus with a 99% pediatric recovery rate. Kids deserve better, and we, the community, demand it.
That concludes the 30 minutes for public input. So at this time, we will close the public comments regarding the agenda items. So, Mr. Russell, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Arpanoff. And thank you to everyone that spoke. I also, if I can speak to the board and saying we appreciate the calmness of listening to you and having respect to listen to each speaker. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the action item of tonight. Dr. Arpanoff.
Thank you. This evening, I'm going to have a presentation. Let me bring up the information here. I apologize. Myself crazy. This evening, Mr. J.C. Taylor, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources Technology and Health Services, along with Amy Norman, Director of Health Services, will be presenting to you revisions to the 21-22 Return to School Plan. I'm recommending that the board approve the plan this evening, and we'll have the turn the floor to them to provide you with presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arpanoff. What we'd like to do tonight is provide an update to the plan that we presented back originally in July to the school board. Ms. Parker is going to be our navigator on the presentation. I threw a couple curveballs at her, but I think she'll get through it for us. So, I just want to start by making a comment that Ms. Norman and I both are also parents in this district. We have children throughout the schools. We were both trained to come here and support schools and students in an educational environment. This is not the type of presentation we ever look forward to making. But we are going to present the recommendation that we've worked through from guidance from the state, from the county, from the CDC, and from your input through our school board. And that's what we initiated. So, next slide. With all that being said, this has been a very passionate, purposeful goal of our school board is to keep our students in our schools in traditional learning. That's what we feel like is best for our students. That's what we want to do. We want to keep all of our schools in our schools, all of our students within our schools as much as possible this school year. Next slide, Ms. Parker. Going a little further into that goal, we believe that in-person learning provided by our exceptional teachers is the best way for our students to learn. Unfortunately, in the past 3, now almost 4 weeks, that traditional mode of learning has come under threat. And it has significant risks at a scale we did not see last school year. Some of those risks I've listed here. We have currently more positive cases in 3 weeks than we had in the last 3 months. That's just through last Friday. When we look at this week, it's going to be even longer. Last week alone, we saw 594 quarantines and isolations from COVID. In the prior year school year, we moved to the blended model of learning, just above 300 and then between 400 positive cases, or quarantines and isolations. And unfortunately, something we didn't see as much last year, but is happening very quickly in our buildings this year, is we're reaching that 20% absentee rate. And that's something that's been around for a long time, well beyond COVID. It's something that Ms. Norman and her team track. Typically, we only have to track it through major influenza seasons, or H1N1, or something like that. But this year, we're seeing our schools getting awfully close to that 20% mark. And why that's so important is that requires mandatory reporting to the state. And then we investigate why we're at 20% with our county. And you've probably seen the news. There are schools who have hit that mark and have been recommended that they close those schools and move to a blended model. We don't want to do that. And finally, our staff quarantine and isolation numbers are rising each week. These are vaccinated and unvaccinated staff members. As we mentioned, vaccinated folks are testing positive for COVID still. And so we are getting concerned that our ability to maintain that traditional learning environment is slipping away from us. And so this evening, we'd like to make a series of recommendations and summary of those changes. I have a slide here. And then we're going to get a little more in depth with the data and why we're recommending these changes. The first one would be a recommendation and a change to our face covering policy. At this time, we currently operate as face coverings optional at all times. We would like to change that and recommend that we look at all individuals wearing face coverings indoors and on the school bus. We will use what the Johnson County Health Department has recommended to us, a threshold of 1% in our school buildings of positive cases would trigger a strong recommendation from the corporation. We would communicate that to families and ask them that they wear a face covering so that we don't go up to the next bullet point, which is a 2% threshold. At 2%, we would then require face coverings for all individuals in the building. And it would remain a requirement until we get back below that 1% threshold for about a week. So we want to make sure if we see a spike, we can mitigate that, and we can return back to a level that we feel like we can continue with our traditional education. We do want to point out a bullet here that entire classrooms could be quarantined and moved to e-learning with 3 or more positive cases. Some of the guidance we've received here is to start doing that in 1 or 2 cases. After speaking with the county, they feel comfortable, and we would continue to use 3. And I say continue because we've had to close some classrooms already this school year. And close isn't a great word, but it's a short and concise one. What it means is we quarantine all of those students, and most of them could return on that day 8 as a class, or day 11 or 14, depending on their choice. But that's really what that means. As I mentioned on the last slide, we are getting close to where we hit that 20%, and we may have to ask the state and let them know that we may need to close the building. They may tell us we need to close that building. We may not have that choice. They may ask us to move our students to e-learning instead of the traditional mode of learning. And this is all total illnesses, and so this isn't just COVID illnesses that might factor into this. And that's one more reason to kind of think about with a face covering help us not just with COVID, but with some other spread of whatever the illness is going to be.
Please, let's stop. Do not interrupt.
When a building reaches 2% positive cases, we would also make a change for the indoor activities taking place after school in those buildings. We would require face coverings for all spectators and non-participants in that activity. Per the Indiana Department of Health, the antibody testing is no longer allowed to avoid quarantine. They never allowed us. Our county did recommend it at one point, and they removed that recommendation. We appealed to the state, we've asked them to allow this, and they have said firmly no. Finally, we will make a change to our school day visitors and volunteers. We would like them to wear their face coverings at all times, as long as Johnson County is outside of the blue advisory status. And once a building reaches a full 2% of positive cases, we might limit our volunteers and visitors to only the essentials. Ms. Norman's going to share some of the data. She works in this every day. This is what she does for us so much, and her team does and supports. And she's going to share so we can get a feel for what this really looks like in our schools.
As you can see, beginning with our first case occurred on August 6th. August 5th was a great day because we knew everybody was going to be in school and it wouldn't be a problem. And we wouldn't have any hopefully sick people there. But we've been trickling up. In fact, it's been more than a trickle. We've kind of been jumping exponentially each week. As you can see, we started with 2, we had 34 the second week of school. The third week of school, we were at 99. And this week, as of this evening at 5 o'clock, we were at 97 cases. So we'll be well over 100 by tomorrow. Because of that, obviously there's COVID-related absences that go into that. There are quarantines that occur. I know that is frustrating to families. I know that's upsetting to people. I would like to say that when we quarantine, we're looking at a 3-foot area for close contact. What that has equated to is approximately 2 to 3 on average students who are quarantined. There are some areas where we just can't win the quarantine issues, okay? Lunch is one of them. As you can see, sitting at these tables, you sit closer than 3 feet, no matter what you do. It's just part of the process. You can go to the next slide. This is kind of a look at where we stand on the far, I guess it would be your right there, is our current positive cases that we're sitting at as of 5 o'clock today. And this, if I'm not mistaken, this is where we are looking at that 1 to 2% threshold. These cases, when we have a positive case, it will sit as a current positive case for 10 days, according to the county. We look at that isolation period that that person is under until they can return to school. That's what we've been instructed by the county health department to be able to determine these types of things. So that's the calculation that we're using. On the left, that shows the threshold of cases for where we would be to hit those marks of that 1% and the 2%. Go to the next slide. This is kind of look at just our daily absences. This takes into account not just COVID. This takes into account just parents calling in because their kids are sick, which I greatly appreciate that you do that. Whether you test or not, whether you believe in testing or not, please keep your children home if they don't feel well. They don't learn at school when they're not feeling well. Whether they have a fever or not, if their head is full of snot, they can't function at school. And so we appreciate it when you keep them home. So thank you. We greatly appreciate it. Please continue to do that. But as you can see, we are having difficulties with the number of absences that we're experiencing, whether it be COVID, whether it be RSV, whether it be just a random cold, whether it be whatever is out there in the community that's going on. These things affect our ability to teach kids in school. Okay. This kind of gives us an indication of where we were last year versus where we are this year. Looking at week 3 there, we were up to, I guess it's week 2, or week 3 now. We were at 99 cases at the end of the week. Week 3 last year, a year ago, we were at 3 cases. We've been, at the rate that we are going, I think we're currently 232 total cases for the school district. Last year, we had 744 for the year. Our battle is not quarantine. Our battle is that this is something that is spreading. It's something that's making people sick and it's making it so that they can't come to school. I heard some people in their comments talking about close contacts and things like that. And that might be the next slide, guys. Last year at this time, we had quarantined 418 kids on 3 cases. And one of the things I want to point out is at that time we were doing a 6-foot distance for contact tracing. When we went into second semester, the state reduced that distancing to 3 feet. And part of that was because of data showed close contacts were not contracting this. And so they felt comfortable allowing that distance to come down, which I applauded and was excited about because I was very frustrated. This year, you know, we've had 594 quarantines, but we've also had dramatically more cases. But that goes to show that we're trying to keep those quarantines so that as I said, we're following the guidelines that have been issued by the county health department, which is 3 feet. So that's what we're working towards. By doing that, our numbers for quarantine are very similar to what they were in the spring. Our issue this year is we just have so many more cases. We're working tirelessly to just try to keep up with it. That just kind of shows, you know, that average of, you know, last year we would have about 33 absences first semester whenever we had a positive case. This year we've gotten that broken down to, it's about 3 kids. Generally speaking, at the elementary level, these are the kids that your kids are hanging out with these kids all day. You know, we've tried to pod them, they eat lunch together, they're sitting together. You know, we've done everything. You know, the teachers have done a magnificent job of trying to get their rooms so that we keep these things so that they're not taking out entire rooms. They're not taking out entire rows. They're not taking out 9 kids per one, which was where we were at last year. One of the things I think that is most disturbing for me is that last year I had 18 students that I could say were close contacts who tested positive. That was for the entire school year. That was part of my frustration with a little bit of the quarantine because, you know, it didn't seem to necessarily affect the other students. As we've said, we were keeping healthy kids at home. This year, just in these 3 weeks, I've already had 15 students test positive who were close contacts. That's, you know, right now we're running at about 6.7% test positive if they come in contact with another student who has COVID. That's part of the reason why we're doing the quarantine. The problem that we're running into is can't get them out fast enough that it doesn't make more quarantines. This variant that we have is a lot more contagious. Last year, it was estimated to be 1 person with COVID would probably infect 3 people. This year, it's 1 person with this Delta variant infects about 8. And that's alarming. And I'll be honest, when I check attendance, you know, I know that there's been some things posted on Facebook where there have been some mistakes made in regards to contact tracing. And you're right, we are human. We do the best that we can. And it is difficult. It's difficult to find. It's difficult to make sure that we have the distances correct. It's difficult to make sure we have the seating chart correct. But we do try to correct those if that happens. And I also think that we're doing a pretty darn good job with it. Unfortunately, one of the trends that I've noticed that's really disturbing is a lot of times when I pull these names up, those kids have been absent within that same week. So whether they tested or not, it tells me they potentially could have a problem. They potentially could have gotten infected at school, or they could have come to school and infected other people with whatever it is that they have.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Really appreciate that. Wanted to kind of throw a slide in here that summarizes and takes a pause from where we're at. So our recommendations tonight are to start as tight as we can and try to mitigate spread in pockets. And so the recommendation we made earlier, you noticed, would be on a building basis where we make the change in the base governance. We've also tried to be even a little more closer to the case by looking just at a classroom. And that's what the slide kind of represents, and something I talked about earlier, is that we would look to quarantine a classroom before we were to close or quarantine a whole school. Unfortunately, that could happen at 3 or more positive cases. It has happened already this year. And then the 20%, as you saw with the chart, is something we're approaching very quickly. Many of our schools are at the 15% threshold at the end of last week, and we continue to watch that daily. And Ms. Parker, we can go to the next slide. So, and this is the one that has a couple extra clicks, so if you want to go ahead and click once more, I'd appreciate it. This is a model that someone enjoyed earlier and didn't mention this. That's okay, sorry about that. It's okay. The items in the light blue are things that we're already doing or things that are under the school corporation's kind of control. You'll see we've kind of layered these pieces of Swiss cheese together so that we could maybe stop that infection from reaching the individual at the other end. No single layer itself will protect us from this virus. But with all of these layers stacked upon each other, we have our best chance to fight against the spread. Across the top, physical distancing, stay home if you're sick, teaching students proper hand hygiene. If crowded, we're limiting our time. We're trying not to create any crowds. Ventilation, outdoors, and air filtration is something I'm so proud of what our corporation's done, what Dr. Long and his team have done. If you look above you this evening, you see these fixtures that are not lights. These are air purifiers. They do have UV light inside of them. They are cleaning the air in this room where our students eat every day. We're adding these throughout the corporation and have a plan to add them in every learning space through our upcoming construction projects. Beyond that, some of the air in the schools is already being turned over in a way that's much more cleaner than you've ever seen in a household or residential setting. The final blue teal, or the teal box across the top, is quarantine and isolation, and that's a strategy we've employed to try to mitigate the spread. At the bottom, we have 2 teal boxes where it's avoiding touching your face, again, teaching the kids, and then the use of tracing. There are 3 items that we don't have a lot of control over, and that's vaccinations. While we have a great rate in our county, we don't have control over that. We have not mandated that for students or staff. We have listened to the government messaging. We have received financial support that we've put into these things like the air filtration and to help our teachers hone their skills and provide learning in 2 different modes. We've done that. And then, unfortunately, fast and sensitive testing is something that's slipping away from us quickly. I know Ms. Norman said that right now when she makes her phone calls or when she talks to a parent and they're interested in returning on day 8, she encourages them to schedule their appointment today because there is a significant slowdown and backlog in the testing turnaround right now, and even to get an appointment. So finally, the last box there in green is something that we've not employed this school year. It's something we did have last year, and that's what we're talking about this evening is the addition of face coverings, yet an added layer of protection. We feel like all of those layers together really could help us stay in this traditional learning mode, which is what we want to do. I talked a little bit about our vaccination rates in the county. Very proud of these and the way they've grown since we started looking at these in June and July. We're up almost 7 to 8, even 10% in one of the zip codes. These are the 3 zip codes that represent Center Grove schools and beyond. When we look at all 3 of these, and you'll see some really impressive protection in our community. Unfortunately, we know that these values don't hold true when we talk about school-age kids. Just the county average alone is not anywhere near this. We don't get school-level data on this as easy as we'd like or as well as we'd like. I also can't tell you how many students in Center Grove High School are vaccinated. This one will take a good stab at it. But honestly, this is what's published out there, and this is what we know to be true. So let's talk a little bit more about how we will communicate these changes to parents if the board approves these changes this evening. When we hit the 1% positivity in a building, that's where we'll send out a parent square notification so that folks know. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight that quickly. A lot of times we don't have our final case counts in until 6, 7 o'clock after our principals and Ms. Norman and her team work through all of the reports and contact tracing for the day. And so the next morning we'd actually send out some communication on this and let folks know. We'd also post it to the district dashboard. You see some changes to that where we kind of put those color codes out there so folks can understand the situation in their building. When we do hit 2%, that's where, again, I kind of got ahead of myself there, but that's where it'll be, we will find that out on, say, Tuesday evening. We communicate that out on Wednesday morning, and the recommendation or the requirement would start the following school day on Thursday. So that we give parents, students, and staff a chance to prepare for this. Our staff can inform the students that when they get on the bus in the morning or when they arrive, that's the expectation. And then finally, dropping below 1% is something that could happen. We hope it does. We hope that once the face coverings are on and these other things are in place, that we don't have long time for above 2%. We hope it spikes and comes back down so we can return where we're at. This one is a little bit different on communication. If a building is found to fall back below 1%, we'd watch that for a period of time. We're saying 1 week. And then that's when we would stop that. That option, we should return back to optional at that point if we fall back below that 1%. And so there's a little bit of a delay there just to make sure we truly came down off that spike. Some of the graphics that you'll see online try to make some of this communication a little bit easier. Ms. Conrad does a great job with her team in putting this together. Of course, you'll see a lot of this on our website as we move forward. This plan is adopted. And this is where, in green, cases that are below 1% ability, masking will remain optional. When we get in between that 1% and 2% threshold, we strongly recommend face coverings. And then once we hit 2% or more, that's when we move to the requirement. Again, we have the federal mandate that still requires the mask on the bus. And then our visitors and then our school clinics and anyone returning on those enhanced precautions would still have a mask requirement. All of this information will be available on all of our web pages. At the very top, you'll see COVID-19 as a choice. That will take you to the entire COVID-19 webpage where you'll also see the dashboard and some great tips on how to teach your student and protect them and what symptoms to look for. We also have been, and we will continue to publish our cases daily. Again, we'll move to that color code system as well so folks know what percentage we're in. And then we do absences that are related to COVID on a weekly basis. Sometimes that ebb and flows. We kind of draw a line in the sand at the end of the day Friday and put that number out there on Sunday so the folks can see what happened that part of the week. Kids will Friday. It's often Saturday for you. So, again, a summary of kind of what we've covered, and this is what you'll actually see on the website, would be the face covering recommendation that we talked about earlier. Classrooms observing 3 foot of social distancing. That will be something we'll see more classes even spreading out beyond that if they're able to. We talked about that change in the visitors as once we reach 2% or if the county's not in blue advisory status. Our enhanced cleaning, it's not stopped since last year. Our high touch areas, our air filtration, all of those things will continue. We'll be looking at the water fountains and bottle fillers and those types of things. Extracurriculars are going to align with the school building. So when a building moves above 2%, that's where we add that additional protection in the evenings for our spectators and our non-participants. And then finally, we'll continue to contact trace and quarantine per the guidance that we've received through the governor and the Department of Health. I think we'll pause there. This is the website where all that information will be published. And I want to thank you, board, for listening and your attention here. If there are any questions about that,
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Russell, members of the board, do you have any questions for both of them?
Persons, I'm sure people have questions. How would they send questions? Where do we send questions?
As usual, they can send questions to myself, to Mr. Taylor, or even Mrs. Norman. They can do that through our website and on our emails. They can also do that through our communication email, which we have as well. Stacey, I'm sorry, what is it? Communication at senatorroad.us. So those are some ways they can reach out.
Thank you. Well, as this is an action item, our next order of business would be to see if we have a motion on this presentation from Mr. Taylor.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the plan as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second? I second. Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Are there any questions or comments?
The one thing I didn't see in the slide deck, my apologies for not asking this a little sooner, the effective date, once we get approved tonight.
We would like to begin this on Monday. That will give us an opportunity, as you saw on the slides, we have a couple of buildings that are in the red status as of today.
That was why I asked that question.
Communicate that tomorrow clearly, set folks up to be successful on Monday.
Any other questions? Discussion?
I guess my next things I have aren't necessarily questions, but more of a comments or observations. I want to thank you and Mrs. Norman both for the effort and the hours in answering the board's questions. Dr. Arkanoff, your team has put a lot of thought and energy into this plan as we have moved forward. I think as I commented in the July meeting, this is going to be, the plan's going to evolve over time. We were hoping that as we got into the school year that maybe some of the things we had in place, we could begin to relax a bit, and I think our numbers within the building show us otherwise. I think the plan as presented is good, appropriate responses to where we are. I obviously, don't always agree, as I've stated numerous times, members of this board, with our health department on things, and we're going to continue to work on those things as we go with the health department. So.
I just have a few things to add to that, and I want to start again by thanking the two of you for all the efforts you put in. As people know, no one in here likes COVID. No one in here likes the position the community's put in. We've got friends, we've got neighbors. We all passionately want to keep our kids in school. We all passionately want to keep our kids safe. We all passionately want to do what's right. I want to thank each speaker tonight, because you came up here and you did it the right way. You gave us very informative information. You came up here and you spoke from the heart. You came up here and you spoke from the information that you have and you provided. So thank you for all of that. This is the way a community is supposed to do something like this. We're not always going to agree. We're going to be able to sit down and have a civil conversation about it. I said it after the last board meeting, I'm going to say it again. So I thank you all for that. Last year we had a quarantine problem. We got quarantine reduced to 3 feet from 6 feet. This year we have a COVID positive problem. So now, with the layers that have been presented, I believe our administration, I believe our health folks here within the corporation are doing everything they can to try to keep our doors open. I had a senior last year. She had a mask on all year. I didn't want her to have a mask on all year. She got quarantined because I caught COVID. I didn't want her to get quarantined. It wasn't a fun way to spend a senior year. She made it through it. She's in college, and guess what? They've got a mask on her there too. And I wish they didn't. But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. With all that being said, I think any chance and any move we can make that increases the chances of keeping our kids in-person learning is the step I want to take at this point. But, as I said, the meeting in which we approved COVID, I have not approved COVID, approved the COVID plan. At the meeting in which we approved the COVID plan, I said everything that we have done from day one is always subject to change. We talk and question and constantly push. As you know, the 5 of us up here don't agree on everything, but we respect each other's opinion. As you know, the community doesn't agree on everything, but I ask you to respect each other's opinion. So we're not done. This may not be our last move. I hope the numbers go down. I hope masks work and we go in the right direction. But I thank you for everyone tonight showing up, everyone tonight expressing their opinions in a very professional and very civil manner.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any other additional observations?
I know I spoke up the last board meeting as well, and I guess I'll start by saying that what I say is my opinion. This doesn't necessarily reflect the opinions of everybody that you see here, my fellow board members, but as Rob said, we do not all agree. We do not all agree with everything in this presentation. But I will tell you the one thing that we do agree on is the fact that I want my kid in school. I have 2 kids. I have one in elementary and I have one in middle school, and I do not want my 6th graders sitting home learning on the counter. I don't want that. Are my kids wearing masks today? No, they're not. That's my position. Like I said, that this is me, this is my family, this isn't them. But at the end of the day, I want my children in school. So if that means that I need to compromise and I need to put a mask on my child so that they can continue to stay in school, then that is exactly what I'm going to do. But again, I appreciate all of you coming out. I appreciate the emails that you send. I walked through schools this week. I wanted to see for myself what our teachers and our principals are going through. And so I took time out of my workday and I walked through schools. And I listened. I wasn't asking a ton of questions. I just listened. I listened to the principals. I listened to, a principal talk about the struggles with, certain students that may have issues wearing those masks. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, I think that we need to find that compromise as a community. And I feel like this plan is a good compromise and it's a start. And it is an ever-changing plan. And if, like I said in the last board meeting, if you do not think that S5, F6 actually do not talk daily, you are wrong. And if you do not think that I do not care about your children, you are wrong. Because I care about every single one of your children, including my children. And I want what's best for all of our kids, and I want them to be in school. So this is my 7 months on the board. I'm super emotional. I've not slept well all week, but please understand that we are trying to do what's best for our kids. And while we may not agree, we have to respect each other's opinions and keep this going for our kids. And thank you for everything that you've done. I know that this is not been easy for you either. And what you go through on a daily basis, I'm sure is not easy.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaines. Trevor?
Start with you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to put all this together. And Amy, I want to address you specifically. I want to apologize on behalf of a lot of people in this community that have beat you up on emails that you didn't deserve to get, to be honest with you. You have probably the worst job I could ever imagine. That's calling parents and telling their kids to be in school. So for that, I know you probably get a lot of pushback, and I hate that you have to deal with that. And we all realize that, recognize that. Next, Dr. Urbanoff, I've watched you handle this with a lot of patience and a lot of grace over the last couple of weeks, even leading up to this meeting. I even noticed you answered emails back at 4 o'clock in the morning a few times. So, and I was up to it, because like Amy said, it's a stressful life, and I'll dream about it, and I'll wake up. We're lucky not only to have you, but everyone who sit over there at the school, honestly. To my fellow board members, every one of you has handled this with a lot of grace and a lot of patience. Like you guys all said, we definitely don't agree on certain things, and I appreciate the conversations. They've been meaningful, and I appreciate you guys helping me understand your concerns and understanding mine. It does upset me that this decision is put on the shoulders of school boards. As far as I know, none of us here are disease experts. We should have to be making those kind of decisions for people's families and your children. And lastly, I want to thank everybody that came here tonight. Take time out of their evenings to express their concerns to us. It does really mean a lot to us. We've had tons of emails, lots of opinions, lots of data, from medical field professionals all the way to just a mom or a dad that wants their kids to stay in school. But for what it's worth, I'm honored to represent for what I feel is the majority of the community and how I vote tonight. And lastly, I do want to pray for the safety of our brothers and sisters overseas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too thank the administration. As president, I'm in conversation with them pretty much a daily basis. I also observe how much time this particular issue, subject, has taken part and taken of their daytime. When we still have a school, we still have other things that go on that we must keep going in the midst of all this. And they have done just an outstanding job, and we really do appreciate it. We can't say it all the time, but we do feel it, we do mean it. And I want to thank the community. There could be worries when you have a larger crowd like this. I'm very proud that we have this involvement. We've had board meetings where it was echoing out there that this particular issue has hit the community from many different angles. And it is hard to find where is that medium, where is that middle ground, where is the right thing to do? Because it could be the right thing to do this week, and then, boy, that darn pandemic, that darn virus decides to do something else. So we have to react to it. we have to figure out, okay, how do we stop this project? I have a niece that's a respiratory therapist who went through all of last year and this year, and was just about crying on my shoulder telling me, Uncle Jack, every 72 hours we get new information on how to work with this, how to handle this. And many times, the new information totally contradicted the original treatment. So you can imagine how you feel when you get that kind of thing and think, what did I do something wrong? You know, before? But it's a fluid situation. We go through that. We get information. You have, all of you have sent emails. I do my best to read them all until my eyes get crossed. And I get medical advice. You should have masks on. I get medical advice. They don't do any good. I have to put that together. The board has to put that together. Where is that medium? Where is the, you know, not the happy medium that pleases everybody, but for the students? Because I can guarantee you, everyone up here, the kids come first. That's why our challenge is keep them in school. As a former teacher and I've subbed kindergartners to honor senior students and loved every minute of it. But the important thing is to keep them in that classroom because I do not believe e-learning is good for them. Hybrid's not the best, but at least they're seeing each other once in a while. They're getting in a classroom once in a while. So we have to figure all that out along with this. So as you can see, it's a challenge. It is a challenge that keeps us up at night. I know this guy and I have texted at 4 in the morning, and it does hit you. You lay there, trying to go to sleep, and you think, which way do we need to go here with these kids? Because the kids are the main thing. So, I don't need to repeat a lot of what the others have said here. But again, I do want to say I appreciate your integrity tonight to make this a good meeting, understanding you believe in your point, you want to get your point across, and it makes me so proud. I grew up in this community, and it makes me so proud that you are figuring out a way of having civil discussion. You are figuring out a way to agree to disagree when we see what's happening in the world and around our country. So, thank you for that. I know that we are seeing some other schools doing different things from us. I don't mean to simplify it, but there's that old saying, well, if Johnny says to jump off the bridge, you're going to do it. You know, if Johnny goes jump off the bridge, does that mean you need to do it? We have to look at that. You know, they're making decisions that they see fit for their population, for their school, their kids. We have to do that here. What do we feel is best for our community and our kids? I've said it before, you'll probably be tired of hearing it, but we deal with the state, the federal government, the state, the county, CDC. Looking at all those different things that sometimes coincide, but many times don't coincide. And as Mr. Hubbard alluded to, they've all figured out how to throw it down onto the backs of the school board. So none of them have to make the decision. As you can imagine, that's hard. There's no way around it, it's hard.
Well, and Mr. Russell, to that point, my son who's a senior goes to C9, and we were notified from C9 earlier this week that masks are now required at C9 because they felt that was the appropriate response to what was going on in the Central 9 building with 11 different schools feeding into the building. I had a conversation with him about it. He wasn't thrilled with the idea, believe me, but he understood it and got it at the same time. And if it helps keep them in school and keeps them learning, he's willing to put on a mask and do that. So we got some of our students are going to be required to wear a mask at Central 9, and that's just going to be the way it's going to be for now.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I don't think I need to go on or say any more. Is there any other comments by any board members before I call for a vote?
No, sir.
None here. Dr. Arcon, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one last thing. I really appreciate all of you and your work on this. As they've shared, this is probably the most stressful thing I've ever seen a board go through. Obviously, the community and everything else going through. But your dedication and care to doing the best that you can do is obvious. Your commitment to the position that you've been elected to is really impressive, quite honestly, because you're not doing it for the big $2,000 you get a year. So, you know, so it's really just admirable, all the efforts and work you've done. As you've all shared, can't say enough about my entire team. Of course, Amy, you know, if we could just all, everyone here, give her a hand.
Point out that it's not just me.
Absolutely.
I have an entire team. Some of them are here tonight to be supportive of me. And I'm very thankful. We have staff, we have nurses in all of our buildings, we have clinic assistants in our buildings. They're doing the best that they can. I know that you have interacted with them. And I appreciate that people be civil with us as we're trying to work through this. I know it's hard, and I'm just very thankful to be in this community. I've grown up here, and I appreciate what you guys have done tonight and being civil to one another. And I hope it continues, but more importantly, it's not just me, it's my whole team. So please remember them too. Thank you.
The last thing I'll say is, as you pointed out, served our country for 8 years, United States Army. Part of that, and the oath I took was defending the Constitution and the laws of our country. And this forum that we have today. And what I appreciate most about that is that we've all come together, and no matter the vote, that what we have here in this country is a process. So however it turns out, we'll respect the process and we'll carry it out. If the board approves the plan, we'll carry it out. If the board does not approve the plan, we understand, and that's the process. So I just want to thank you all and everyone here tonight and how you handle this, and that I know that all of us will respect the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arcon. No other discussion? Mr. Alexander, would you repeat the motion, please?
Yeah, sorry. In case you know, we talked about 25 minutes.
Few minutes.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the return to school plan, or the changes to the return to school plan as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Jack, you want a second?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second.
You did, yeah. Okay, so Mr. Alexander made the motion, Mr. Daniels seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm opposed.
Thank you.
With that, one announcement is September 23rd is the next regular board meeting, and we are done. Thank you.